Hello to our Outfest audience. My name is Byron. My pronouns are he, him, and you are joining us for our shorts program, Surrealness, which plays with sci-fi, horror, all the fun genres. Um, and here we have our filmmakers and cast and crew who will be here to do a Q&A with us all. These shorts all kind of exhibit various forms of desire and intimacy through portraits of longing, acceptance, and connection in ways beyond our own scope. So I'm really excited to have everybody here and have the audience here watching us. All right, so we'll start off with Healing Me. So if you want to introduce yourself and say your name, and then I'll ask.
Yeah, I'm Lauren Neal. My pronouns are she and hers. Healing Me was actually a submission for the 1-minute movie contest for Outfest Fusion in the spring. And so it won an award for that, so it gets to be an Outfest. It basically deals with my personal experience of being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is its own kind of horror. And kind of to like in the filmmaking process, I guess, of that. I filmed and edited and basically did it all myself because there's something about like the process of that, which is sort of like a version of psychosis, which kind of represents my own experience with that disorder. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, you kind of touched in a little bit of what I wanted to ask. Like I feel like there's so much when it comes to bipolar, and you are able to really grasp all that within that 1 minute, and kind of like you shoot a lot in different places and there's like a lot happening. And I was wondering how the editing process was that to like really get an arc or that kind of all of that condensed into that 1 minute. How was that process for you? And kind of just like
I knew the idea that I had. I didn't have that much time. I just had a few days to do it. But I'm a kind of person who likes to figure out how to make whatever I have work for me. So like putting restrictions on myself actually frees me up in a lot of ways. So making a decision, for example, like not even to have my wife help me, limited the amount of things that I would be able to do. The editing process was sort of a nightmare, honestly, because there's so much different stuff going on. But yeah, I'm definitely like a pastiche kind of person. Like I just want to know what's there, and then I'll figure out how to make that embody the idea that I'm trying to express.
yeah, no, it was great. It's really interesting to know that you purposely also like stopped yourself from asking for help to really get into that, and that seems really awesome, and also just exciting to be able to accomplish all that in that short amount of time if you only had a few days, because there really is a lot happening. So I'm so excited that you're able to be here and part of Outfest LA also. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Next up we have Dreaming of Louise. Y'all here? Oh no. All right. Sweet. Well, yeah, that's a really awesome short that deals with kind of like pleasure and pain and how they're kind of like very much aligned in a lot of ways. So y'all be excited to watch that and be here for that as well. All right. So next we have Bliss is Orange.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and stuff.
Hi, I'm Sam. My pronouns are she, her. I wrote and produced this short, and it's a sci-fi rom-com about meeting the one.
I'm Jenna Cannell. My pronouns are also she, her, and I directed Bliss is Orange.
All right. Yeah. I loved your short. I think there's something so fun in kind of sci-fi. The world of sci-fi is like it could be so grand, but it can also just really be something a little bit more grounded. And I feel that though obviously there's like these chips that indicate who you're going to fall in love with, which is kind of a grand idea, but it's still a lot more kind of like possible. I kind of was like curious about the world building in this short, and like what kind of research, if at all, did you do in terms of like when does this take place, or like at what point in the future, or is it something that like a what if of like if we lived in the society, and how do like these chips indicate how we connect or how we find that the one?
Yeah. The thing, one of the things I loved about Sam's script is that it's so grounded, like you were saying, and really the only thing that's fantastical at all about that world are these embedded chips in everyone's wrists that light up, telling you what percentage of a match you are with someone in a certain radius of yourself. And I mean, Sam's spoken about it before. We already have that. When you go on Netflix, a movie has a certain percentage of a rating that it's going to be matched with you. And you mean even on dating apps, it tells you what percentage of a match you are with people. And so it's something that I thought was cool about the story and about the world is that it could happen tomorrow. We're very close to it, and there's nothing. It's sci-fi, but it's contemporary.
Yeah, I wanted it to be like in our world now, almost like Jenna said, like it could happen tomorrow. So I just knew I wanted to ground it like with like famous figures and just like the technology we have, aside from like the sci-fi tech that's used in it. Like everything else is just kind of like the same, so you can imagine like going through that now.
Okay, so that actually like answers my question in terms of just like it's more like an algorithmic thing.
Yeah.
Which is why there's that like that little twist that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's
and
so
cool. Yeah, you make a good point about what that means for connection, because we do put so much trust in the connections that we make via technology. I mean, look at what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
How much stock do we put in those connections? And if those connections are based on algorithms, are they really connections?
Yeah, it kind of almost makes us question technology too a little bit, as far as how it plays with like how humans relate to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and what love means in that space.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so next we have In Orbit.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey. Hello.
Hi, I'm Katie McNeese. Pronouns are she and her as well. I wrote, directed, produced and edited In Orbit.
Oh, wow.
It's my first film. I'm in Ireland now, where the film is. That's 2:00 in the morning. That's why it's so dark in here. So my film is based around an interview with an elderly woman, which is taking place in this real kind of sci-fi looking office about 50 years in the future. And the office that she's in are the human experience records, and she's been interviewed about the greatest experience that any human has ever experienced. And it's a very simple story about someone being kind of in their 40s, so middle-aged, being very lonely and never having loved, and then learning to love and learning to accept themselves in the process, and kind of meeting someone and thinking, look, can I do this or not, and having to accept who they are before they can do it. And so that's it. It's a really, really simple story, and it's split between this woman who's aged 40 who's going through this experience, and then this woman who's actually 80 years of age remembering that experience as well. And I think just in Ireland in particular, we're like in some ways we're very far ahead with voting in like the marriage referendum. I mean, I was in my mid-20s when that happened, but at the same time there's this entire generation of people that we've just kind of forgotten, and that have never been in love, and who are going to be closeted for the rest of their lives. And I suppose just approaching it from my first film, like instinctively you always want to do something that's relevant to you. And I think like the loneliness thing and the identity and the finding yourself, like God, like we all go through that. But I just kind of I thought approaching your first film that you should try and look at a story that's slightly more peripheral, and that's not just based on yourself. Because I mean, these people aren't going to tell these stories generally, and if they do, they might be kind of historically founded or something like that. Whereas I thought it was kind of a privilege to tell a story that I didn't know too much about, and that took a little bit more work, like with the script and that kind of stuff as well. And Emer Kinsella is here as well from my film, the composer.
Hi, I'm Emer Kinsella. I'm the composer on In Orbit. My pronouns are she, her. It was really great working on In Orbit and delving into these concepts, like the loneliness concepts, and just coming up with music to enhance kind of the story of a woman opening herself up to a relationship when she's felt lonely her whole life. So I was working with themes based on the rhythm of loneliness, and kind of the deepness of the story just kind of continued to propel the music, and like a lot of ideas came to me from discussing it with Katie. And yeah, she was really great about coming up with like words to guide me, and I just kind of went with these words and worked on it before she'd even shot it, and then kind of developed it throughout the stages. So.
Oh, that's so awesome. I mean, like I feel like you really like captured something really beautiful in terms of kind of what it means to experience loneliness. I mean, even in that opening sequence when she is sitting across from the person doing the interview, there's that whole moment where she talks about her childhood and feeling unseen and fearful and needing to hide. And I think that's and I really thought that was beautiful, and you set it up in this kind of like futuristic space. And there's also that moment where she kind of touches the window in the beginning. As well, and there's like these two things that appear in the background, which I don't think I noticed the first time I watched it, but the second time I was like, wait, something's happening back there. And I think there's so many subtleties in being able to revisit this piece. And also, I mean, I just wanted to know kind of like what inspired you you kind of touched on it a little bit, but to tap into this like future and specifically focus on an older protagonist.
Yeah, I suppose there was something very deliberate in going with a character who was older than me. Like I was 24 when I started to write that film, and I was 28 by the time I ended up filming it. But I think the window that you're describing in the interview scene is not there at all, and that's in my office. There's this really crappy looking grey roof outside with all these pigeons and it's the most depressing looking roof you've ever seen in your life. But there is a window there. And so the image that I have is of the canal in Dublin. It's like one of these really iconic images that we have. So if you think of Dublin, you think of Ireland, and you visited it, this is one of the first things that you think of. So it's kind of iconic in a way that it's not going to change. Like all these awful soap operas that we all had to watch as children all had these opening sequences of the canal, and they will have kind of, for I don't know, I assume for a long time, but the like the towers that you're talking about, like the pool bag towers, are still there. They're very iconic. There's these stacks that are kind of out by the ocean, and they're red and white stripes. But what I had her do by putting her fingers against the window and drag them into view is to kind of assimilate herself into the story. So she's about to talk about the world as she remembers it. And I think there's a very important distinction to be made between, as you're growing up gay, between the world as it actually is and the world as you feel it, and like the world on the outside and the world on the inside. So in her literally touching the window and making the world look like it did as she remembers it, you are getting into her head. I think there's a very, as I said, important kind of distinction between like, this is how it is, but this is how I experience it. Like I'm a twin. My sister didn't grow up the same way that I did because she didn't have the same internal world as me. Like there's lots of little things in the film that you probably wouldn't see the first time. Like in the opening sequence in the bridge where she literally goes back in time, like she remembers being 40. She has to cross this famous bridge in Dublin. It's just off O'Connell Street. And she looks up at a building for a split second before she crosses the road. Now, the building is actually the Heineken building, right? It's this really, really iconic building that we have. Everything's to do with drink in Ireland, obviously. But she looks up at the building, and I rearranged the letters to say here again instead of Heineken, so it's that thing of going back in time. And so, and like that's where the title comes from as well, because I had this kind of uneasy feeling, even like as a prepubescent, because it's not all about sexuality, and in a way it's about your identity. So this feeling when you're a child and you feel like everyone else is kind of in sync and they're in queue and they know what they're doing, whereas I felt like I was in orbit of everybody else. Like I felt I was slightly outside of everything because my world was slightly different. And then also like it's to do with sight and vision. So you look at the world as though it's this cohesive thing, but you don't look at yourself the same way. Like you feel like you're slightly different than everybody. So it's in a sense, although it's like a visual world, it's about I suppose a psychological world, and like your how you identify with it as well.
Yeah, and it was great working with Katie because I'm from Dublin and I live in LA for the last 4 years. So it was the first Irish project I've actually worked on. So it was great to kind of revisit the place that I left a few years ago, and my upbringing and everything, and to see someone else's perspective on the story of like a lesbian relationship. So that was special working with Katie on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Honestly, it's a beautiful, beautiful film, and I did not know it was your first. So that's incredible.
Cheers.
It looks beautiful. It is beautiful. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what you continue to do.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So next we have Meta. If y'all want to introduce yourselves, cast and crew.
Yeah, I'm Savannah, they, them pronouns, and I'm the writer of Meta.
I'm Sydney. I'm the director, she, her pronouns.
I'm Jordan. I play Artie in Meta, and my pronouns are he.
Awesome. Hi, y'all.
Hey.
I loved your film. It's so beautiful, and I think it really kind of follows along how we are finally starting to see trans narratives on screen. And obviously, there's still so much we have to do as like an industry, as these stories are beginning to get told. But what I really enjoyed is that it's a lot more nuanced, and it's a lot more like real in terms of an experience, and it's not about something that we hear about often when it comes to trans narratives. It's more lived in, and I kind of wanted to kind of just see about that choice of having, you know, Artie's character kind of turn into a werewolf once that he has his period before prom. Like, kind of what was that choice behind the werewolf symbolism and stuff?
It was really simple, as I think werewolves are a trans thing, and that's because growing up, all I wanted to be was a werewolf. I wanted to get big muscles. I wanted more hair. I wanted to be seen as powerful. And so I started talking to other trans masculine folk, and you know, there were just so many people that were like, oh yeah, I spent like 8th grade pretending I was a wolf. And I was like, oh, like this must be a trans thing. There must be something in there about transformation and metamorphosis that trans people really cling to. And so I also love that you identified that we were sort of, in a sense, we were flipping two narratives, right? We were flipping the narrative of trans stories or just queer stories in general. So much of our storytelling is the coming out thing, and you know, the external forces being sort of the villain. And Sydney and I really wanted to make a piece that was more about our own internal self-hatred, and especially trans, sort of my experience with dysphoria, trans dysphoria, and in the other sense, flipping the sort of wolfman and werewolf narrative. Most wolfman movies have tragic endings. And so in that way too, we just wanted to sort of like make this like genre bending, flipping everything piece that would maybe bring some light to the trans community.
I love that. Yeah, did anybody else want to speak in terms of that? And then Jordan.
I would just say I thought it was really impressive when Savannah brought this piece to me. You could just see how much passion that they had behind it from the get-go, and how important this piece was to bring a trans story that actually explored, you know, the self versus self battle that some may go through. So we really like took some inspiration from other psychological pieces that explore your own anxiety, your own hatred, and putting it then in a high school situation where everybody has their own, like, I hate how I look, everything, like you're going through your own anxieties. This was just such a fun narrative to then play. Oh, we're gonna have this person not have a coming out story, but have their own self versus self hatred going on. What's inside their mind? How can we play with what they're seeing the world as versus how the world is seeing them?
And I think building upon what they mentioned, it transcends just a trans narrative, because in high school, I mean, so many of us go through so much with our identity, whether you're queer or not, whether you're cis or trans. Even as adults and young adults, we go through that self-hatred where we feel other than. And inside of our heads, we may view ourselves a certain way, when in reality, nobody views us that way. It's just how we view ourselves. So it's a really important piece that talks about identity as a whole, however you identify. And it also builds upon the fact that, you know, the trans masculine experience it varies in so many different ways. And, you know, the menstrual cycle is such a negative connotation in society, no matter how you identify. And so kind of normalizing that to me was really important, and I'm glad that they did that.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool part of it too. It really does kind of just like broaden the experience and stuff. Thanks y'all. And how was like getting into like the werewolf the werewolf costume and makeup and stuff?
It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of like 6 a.m. in the chair for a very long time.
Oh,
But you know, everybody was so amazing, and everybody on set was so like, it was like a family. And we all keep in touch. We went through a lot together. I mean, we were in the bathroom, like poor Savannah was like, I can't, like, I have to leave. Like, and Sydney was in the bathroom with me. I'm like on the toilet, like no pants on, like bleeding, like in werewolf. Like, it's like, it could not get like any messier than that, right? And we have like hair and makeup coming in, like trying to make it look perfect. And they did. And it was a handful, but everybody was a trooper.
Yeah, it's so good. Thank you so much.
Hi, Byron.
So next up we have How I Say I Love You.
Hey, I'm Matt Byro, he, him. I played Betty.
Hey, I'm Andre. I've directed the movie How to Say I Love You at Night. It's really an honor to be here in this festival. So many festivals have canceled this year, and so I think it's just incredible that you guys were able to put this on virtually, and we're really appreciative of that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm so glad we are too. Like, your film is so eerie from the end to the end. Like, it really is just like, yeah, there's just like tonally, I was at the edge of my seat the whole time. And it's all, okay. There's a few questions that I want to ask, but I also like know time-wise. This is all one take, right? Or?
Yeah, it was a true single take that was about 20 minutes. I trimmed off a little from the beginning to get closer into the 15-minute mark. But yeah, it was a few months or like 2 months, right, Matt, of pretty grueling rehearsals, which we then turned into a day of prep and a night of shooting. And the shot it starts inside and travels out onto the crazy unpermitted streets of the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I don't know, by some miracle and despite a power outage in our building, we made it happen.
Oh my gosh. Is that why it's like, there's like that, it's like kind of dark? Or was that just like, was that purposeful?
No, I think that's just mood, but.
Oh, okay. I was like, power outage, what?
I mean, can't you see? I mean, look at my screen at this point. I'm just feeling continuity with my own movie here. But yeah, we had some major power outage in our rickety building, and it put us out a couple hours. But again, by some miracle and Matt's and Chris's fortitude, we were able to finish strong.
Yeah, I mean, how was the rehearsal process in that? I mean, honestly, like the acting is amazing. The way that kind of the characters, like you allow the characters to like come in and out of the frame as things are still happening and the camera's like not on them. And sometimes you don't know what's happening off screen, but the reaction of what's going on screen tells so much. And then there's this moment where, you know, Paul goes out in the front, and then Matt's like kind of looking and then walks into the kitchen, and there's just like this small camera that's showing the front door, and then right when Benny walks out of frame, Paul walks into it. I just was just like, how did you plan all that? And I was like, maybe that's the one thing that was edited or something.
No, I mean, we just had a brave PA hanging out the window with a microphone. I mean, the set was chaotic at times, right? Because everyone had to be quiet on the rickety floors, but we had to walk around the camera, and I had makeup VFX coming in, coming out. You know, it was a very precisely choreographed thing in as much as we could. But to answer your question about the rehearsals and the kind of intention behind the film, I'm so thankful that it had that kind of effects of subjectivity had the effect on you, that because we really planned out all of those beats of like when we're showing Chris's experience versus when we're showing Matt's or Benny and Paul. And I think you're right, those moments off camera are almost more important than the ones on camera. But I mean, I'll let Matt weigh in on any other part of that.
I was just thinking of all the crazy nuances of actually doing it, and that we had one day with the power outage. But I was just thinking of the moment, there's a blood moment.
Oh, yeah.
We had a guy just standing during every take the entire time. He was just standing on the side waiting for me to just go off camera really quick, put the blood on, and then come back. And it was kind of that the whole time, but I feel like that really actually helped with the rhythm because it was such a dance between Benny and Paul as well. So like having to dance with the camera, having to dance with the effects really, I think, heightened the experience of it. And it was an experience, like it really became, we don't get that opportunity that often to tell a story on film from beginning to middle to end. So it almost became more like theater. And it was really, really fun.
It's honestly, it's so beautiful. And I remember watching it and just at some point realizing, I was like, wait a second, there hasn't been a cut yet. Like this is all happening. And yeah, it was great. So lastly, I believe we have Catfish Killer. Yeah. So if you want to introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone. I'm Gil. My pronouns are he and him. I'm addicted to Zoom meetings. And I'm one of the co-writers and co-directors of the film.
My name is Seth. My pronouns are he, him. I am one of the other co-writers, co-directors. Very excited to be here. I have very much enjoyed listening to all your films. I'm very excited to check them out when the festival finally opens. And we also have.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris. I'm an actor in the film and it was my first time producing, so it was a fun dance to do.
And sweet. Okay, so it's so fun. This is so funny. Everything. I'm like slasher horror is my favorite. So, and also like being like a queer person who gets on apps, like there's always that fear of like, who am I talking to, especially if they come over, and that fear of like, if you do have an awkward encounter with someone on the apps, like the possibilities of what can happen and where y'all took that to is just so was just hilarious and scary but fun. And I kind of just want to know, like, what was the overall like process of creating that story, and then also like all of you look like you're having so much fun in the film, in the making of it, and kind of taking the slasher genre and making it super gay, and kind of like flipping it a little bit.
Well, thank you for saying that. The origin is pretty much, so Seth and I and another friend went to Big Bear for like a weekend, and our friend was on the app and with a different profile, and I just kind of told him like, oh my god, like you don't know who's around here, like what if like you end up talking to a serial killer who terrorizes us, like can you stop, so that was pretty much the origin. And I'm glad that you said it was like full of, like it was fun, because like the spirit of that movie for Seth and Chris and I was just like, we just really wanted people to join our Catfish Killer team with like the intention of just, from the feeling of fun. Like we wanted to be this joyous thing. Like there was no one in that crew or cast that didn't want to be there. But Seth, Chris,
Yeah, I'll just follow up. Like, just so everyone knows, because you guys haven't seen the film, it's like a total popcorn movie short. It's three, gay besties in a cabin. One of them catfishes a serial killer, and how are they going to survive? And, like Gil said, we are friends who like to go camping. And, one of the reasons why we did the movie was because we kept searching for references in the moment to be like, oh, this is like that fun gay horror movie. And we kept coming up with nothing. So I think we were like, all right, let's put that director's wig on ourselves and do it. And I think that's sort of where it came from. And while we were doing it, that's when we were able to work in some more aspects. You know, we worked in our friendship, but we also wanted to take kind of a swing at, you know, the sort of homophobia we experience when we're on those apps from members of our own community, you know, and sort of how you feel about yourself when you feel like you can't be yourself and it won't be taken seriously. So those were some of the other things we explored in this project.
Yeah, I had so much fun on this set. It was like just a weekend in Big Bear, and it was the best time. Everyone was on board to have fun, and we laughed a lot. And one of the really special things I think about Catfish Killer is that, you know, when there's a movie that kind of changes your behavior in something in reality, and this is one of those movies. And there's an example. So we filmed this last October. And since then, before COVID, I went on a little camping trip, and some of my friends were on Grindr. And now every time I go on a trip where we're in an Airbnb or whatever, I'm like, there can be a serial killer in the house already. So it like really just makes you think, like, how safe are these apps? And it's a real fun time. It's funny from beginning to end with, you know, jump scares. And that's my favorite genre as well, slasher horror and camp comedy mixed together. So I had a blast, and yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just add, like, you know, like our movie is just so much fun, but at the same time, like, Seth and I really wanted to put ourselves as the cast. Like I grew up watching like Queer as Folk, and, you know, like a lot of the queer like media like representation, they were all white. So I made a conscious effort. I'm like, we're gonna put like a Gil in there, and then we're, you know, so Nathan is Asian American and Sachin is Indian. So like we just wanted to make sure that we had like a diverse cast from the get-go.
Yeah, that was something I really appreciated about it too. I always love when there is a diverse cast in films, specifically like gay films also. I think it's so important.
And just to add on to that too, you know, like we had the luxury of working with a slightly larger crew because it was a location shoot, and our crew also reflected the world that we live in. You know, that was a priority for us. So it was good.
Awesome. All right, everyone, our time is coming to an end, but I just want to say thank you all so much for being here, for making the time from 2 a.m. across the waters. Thank you so much. So excited to have y'all here, be part of Outfest 2020. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Congrats.
Yay, congratulations.